6 p.m. and I call this conference meeting to order. All right, moving down on the agenda, we have roll call, but it looks like all 6 members, including 1 alternate, are present. For the House, we have myself, the chairman of the House Ways and Means, Donald Magnolia. We have Representative Christina Sablan and Representative Leila Staffler. The alternate, Representative JP Sablan, is excused. And on the Senate, we have Chairman Victor Hokug, members Senator Justo Quirigua, Senator Francisco Cruz, and the alternate, Senator Carl King Neighbors. And so with that, members, at this time, we will take a short recess and move over to the Senate. Thank you.
You're good. We are good.
All right, and then we'll take short breaks in between if anyone needs to cool off. And all right, with that, we will now rise back into our meeting. And moving down the agenda, can I get a motion to adopt today's agenda? Motion was made and seconded. Discussion on the motion. Ready? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Today's agenda is hereby adopted. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda, public comment. All right, we don't have anyone in the gallery. And so with that, we now move down to item 5, adoption of the Budget Conference Committee ground rules. Discussion. Recognize?
Maybe we would like to see if the chair can identify what's the. Have you gotten the version from the Senate?
Yes.
And what was been incorporated in the rule from the House? What is it that is incorporated, or the Senate incorporated to the House rule that the House provided for this conference? Maybe we can look into by going from 1 to whatever number the rule ends, 1 to 9, I believe. So we can see the difference of the 2 rules that the Senate and the House put up together.
Okay, we can go by a number in regards to. What's that? Yeah. You want? Oh, I'll recognize the House clerk, the House LA.
Chairman, majority of the changes were just technical. I think the biggest change here was regarding cell phone use.
Okay.
Instead of restricted, we use may be, and upon the chairman's decision, chairperson's decision.
So maybe maybe if we can all agree to just shut off our phone, so that there may be no phone at all during the deliberation of the conference. Yeah, we just shut off our phones. So can we agree that we put on the silent mode then? All right. Okay.
All agree? Put on silent? Yeah. Another change that we will need to make is the House Sergeant at Arms. Sergeant Pete Tuwai is not here today, so filling in is Dennis Regis.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask the clerk what technical changes that we need to look into the rule that is considered a technical change.
Okay, if you look on page 2, under House of Representatives, we just put, after legislative assistant, we just put colon. And then on the bottom, any other request for LB personnel not listed under A, B, we included C. And on the signature page, under Representative Christina M.E. Sablon, we changed member and we put vice chairperson.
Okay. So other than that, we're fine, health members?
All right, if there's no other discussion, can I get a motion to adopt?
So move to adopt House Rule.
All right, motion was made and seconded to adopt the Budget Conference Committee ground rules for House Bill number 22-74, HD3, SD1, and has been seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The ground rules is hereby adopted. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, new business. Up for discussion is House Bill number 22-74, HD3, SD1, entitled "To Make Appropriations for the Operations and Activities of the Government of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, its agencies, instrumentalities, and independent programs, and to provide budget authority for government corporations for fiscal year 2022 and for other purposes." All right. The floor is now open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Recognized, Chair.
maybe before we discuss the House bill, maybe it would be good that both chairmen will come up with an opening statement to the members. And if I may ask your indulgence to start first. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chairman Hoku. Yes, before we begin on the House side, first of all, we would like to take this opportunity to thank the Senate for the speedy review of the House version of the fiscal year 2022 budget. And while we appreciated the Senate amendments, there are certain issues that we would like to address and ask for your consideration. And in particular, we would like to address the CHCC reallocation, as well as the added language to the ARPA provision. And with that said, Chairman and members of the Senate, the House is ready to share with you some of the proposals that we've come up with, in hopes that we can find common ground and see where else we can make changes in order to address the major concerns that the Senate has brought up in their version of the budget. And so with that, members of the House and the Senate and of this committee, we look forward to hearing what the Senate has proposed as well. And we are open to any recommendations you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Manglonia. On behalf of the Senate conference members, our council and our physical analysts and our LB staff, we extend also our appreciation to the members of the House Conference and your staff, and to you, Mr. Chairman, and your council. And we highly hope that today's joint conference meeting to resolve the issues that the House have in lieu of the Senate amendment, that we can come up with a workable solution, that we need not have to prolong the resolution of this fiscal year budget, so we can, both houses can act expeditiously to ensure and give peace to our staff and all the government employees without any potential or anticipated dream for a shutdown. And I hope that this conference will be simple, amenable, workable, so that we can move forward with what we got today with our local resources to be distributed to the department as well. So I hope that each one of us will have an open mind, and will await the House issues as to the Senate action being rejected by the House after we address the House budget at the Senate on an expeditious time. So we'd like to also extend this joint conference to expeditiously resolve and resolve this matter before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Hoku. If any other members of the conference committee would like to make a statement, this would be the time to do so. Recognize Representative Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also to our colleagues on the Senate, Chairman Hokuk, Senator Hustu, Vice Chair Hustu Kiragoa, Senator Cruz, Senator Neighbors. Thank you. Thank you for tolerating the hot chamber today on the House side, and hopefully the fans will keep us all comfortable. But I just want to express my appreciation as well for the Senate acting so quickly on the budget, and I think that for the most part, we appreciated the amendments that were made. I think we actually agree on most things. The CHCC issue is probably, I'd say, that the biggest concern on the House side. I will note that there was wide consensus. Members on both sides of the aisle on the House side wanted to see some funding restored to CHCC that had been reallocated. And so I do hope that you senators will be open to that. We have some thoughts about how we can move some funds around while still funding the additional the offices that you wanted to allocate more funding to. I'm hopeful that we can find some common ground and meet in the middle and address the concerns of both sides, while at the same time restoring some of the funding to CHCC that was reallocated in your version, so that we are giving greater support to our healthcare corporation than they have had for, at least in the last couple of years. So I guess with that, I do look forward to this dialogue, and I hope that we can conclude our negotiations today.
Thank you, Rep. Sablan. Any other member? All right, if there is none, back to discussion on the House Bill 2274. All right. I guess in order to understand the motive behind the reallocation of the 2.6 million, if we can get an explanation from members of the Senate as to how those funds were reallocated.
OIG ditaruh ke IG 2.6. So that was Mr. Chairman, so that is really the major rejection of the Senate action is the 2.6 million that the Senate have reallocate those amounts. And you guys want to find out that 2.6 million, where was it placed?
Well, we were able to identify the areas in which funds were reallocated into, but I guess most importantly, the reasons for taking the 2.6 million out of the CHCC subsidy.
Okay, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I think the allocation of the 2.6 is as a result of a local fund that was given as our share for the Medicaid. Correct? Further to that, we identified that the Medicaid was overcut by additional 120,000. Now, when the Commonwealth Health Center was created to become an autonomous entity, why do we have to continue to give them local funds when they should be self-sufficient as a corporation governing themselves? So we're wondering if the Commonwealth Ports Authority cannot be allocated or cannot be cannot appropriate funds for the operation, being an autonomous agency. Why would one corporation be given first, favoritism than the other? And further to that, members, if we review the justification of the allocation for the 2.6 million from CHC subsidy by the Senate, and the reason being that we decided to use that to restore back the local revenue that was cut, to restore back to the department that are being given by the general fund after we found out that in fiscal year 2019, CHC was given 4.2 million. This fiscal year, the executive branch provided CHCC with $5 million exceeding the enacted 2019 budget. Aside from that, for FY 22 through ARPA, Section 602C1C, CUC also will receive $10 million for equipment for MRI and hyperbaric chamber for the hospital. In addition to that, FY 2022, CHCC will be receiving additional 11 million for premium pay for their essential work for frontliner workers of the hospital. Not only that, the CHCC for FY 2022 will be receiving again another 2,070,304 under for subsidy under Section 602C1C from our. So with this funding, CHCC will be able actually and sufficiently address their needs for our public health services. In another note, we figure out also that CHCC, by virtue of the Attorney General opinion, that medical referral also will be turned over to CHCC, where we provide all the FTEs operation, plus they were given additional 13 million for their operation. So there's a lot of funding that is being given to CHCC to operate fiscal year 2022. And with that reason, Mr. Chairman and members of the conference, the Senate decided that we like to restore back the scholarship also in the amount of 700,000, so that we can ensure that our students, again, plus a new legislation that I think the House passed already, the for the nursing, and the another legislation that now I believe before the House to create the behavioral scholarship that requires also funding. And I think we put there 20 nursing, scholarship in the amount of 8,000 each per year, and the behavioral, if passed by the House and signed by the governor, it will incur again additional 10,000 per student. So we base that our scholarship for our future students will be enabled to secure themselves availing for higher education in the near future without having to worry that the scholarship have no funds. So that's the basis of the Senate taking away the 2.6 to redistribute back to those that were initially cut by the House. And by having this figure, we thought that this will satisfy the CHCC operation. As you may note, members of the House, that we hardly touch any of your amendment other than this. Unlike the previous budget that we have to overhaul most of it. But this fiscal year, for next fiscal year, the Senate have agreed to be uncontended to move forward with what you got presented to the Senate, other than the $2.6 million that is being given outright for CHCC subsidy, when we already know that there's a lot of money coming to CHCC for their operation. So that's the basis of the Senate action. Any one of the member would like to add my statement? Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Hokuk, for the background history on the reasoning behind the decisions that were made. We also appreciate hearing that. Personally, I appreciate the prioritization of NMTI in one of the Senate amendments, and that's something that we all agree upon, and thank you for that. I should have done that too, and so I appreciate that you did that for us with respect to reallocating a larger chunk for them. And so that's something we all can agree upon. With respect to the scholarship, part of the reasoning why we chose as a group to take the local part of that funding versus the ARPA, because we knew that the ARPA we could not really move, or at least that's what we understood, or at least I understood, was that the actual budget request from the scholarship office was well under what was allocated as a whole, even more than what they asked for with the ARPA alone. And so knowing that, we did call them and speak to the Miss Mildred on the floor that day. Miss Selena did that one. And she did confirm with us that the 5 million that was allocated to them from the ARPA would be sufficient to maintain the goals that they had set during the budget hearings that we had. And so that was one of the reasons we went with that chunk in the beginning of reallocations. We chose to prioritize CHC for many reasons, but knowing that they would be taking on the humongous challenge of restructuring and making the medical referral program be something that is not having so many unfunded liabilities, and just knowing the history of that was why we wanted to try and make sure that they don't fall short. I know that there's different accounts for that, but just knowing that they have to restructure the system entirely, having that transition time is really important to make sure that the people of our communities on all 3 islands wouldn't be left with huge medical issues without having the medical referral program be an unfunded liability. And so that was kind of where a lot of our priority came from. Some of these things that were shared about the hyperbaric chamber and the MRI machine, I do remember seeing that in the ARPA presentations. But I guess maybe communication about who would be in charge of that, where that program would go, who's actually going to purchase that, like who's going to be the expenditure authority for the purchase of that, was not something that was very communicated with us during the budget sessions. So we did not take that into consideration as part of the pot that they had. At least I didn't. With respect to the premium pay for the staff at CHC, that too is something that seems to be not as communicated clearly to them as a whole, because some communications regarding premium pay were under the impression that it was more for people that are working in the COVID task force and the COVID areas, which are not all controlled by CHC. At least that was one of my understandings as well. And so we did not put all of that into their basket of funding when we were doing our deliberations at the time. So that's something that maybe you can share more about your conversation if you've spoken with CEO Munya about, that they are fully aware that they actually would be the funding authority, or expenditure authority for those funds, is something that I think would be important for us. I have heard from the different islands about the issues that, having access to consistent medical services is always an issue. For example, I know that my mom struggles to get her prescriptions on Tinian because you only have 2 days to request it. And if you don't get it on the right day, you might be lapsed with your prescriptions. So those are issues that we also would like to possibly provide maybe a budget provision language to ensure that the 2 islands are protected with respect to the personnel and services that are offered in the islands, because that seems to be an issue that is of a concern to this body. And so that's something we'd love to discuss as far as a solution to finding a way to still provide the financial support to our only hospital system, so that it can make sure that it is able to address all islands' needs. And so that's one thing I hope that we would be able to agree upon, if that would make a solution to giving CHC more money, is that we make sure that we protect the Tinian and Rota Islands in the services and personnel that they might have lost in any time frame, so that would address the issue. Thank you. Was I too long?
No, that's very good.
Thank you, Rep. Staffler. And let's just just to remind the members, in regards to Rule 9, each member is given 5 minutes. And so if any other members would like to state their claim on the issue at hand, which is the CHCC 2.6. Floor is now open to any member. I recognize Representative Sablan.
Thank you. And just to add on to Rep. Leila's explanation for why we wanted to see more funding prioritized for our only healthcare system here is, well, one, we're coming from the perspective also that healthcare should be seen as an investment. And, we've seen what CHCC has been able to do since becoming a corporation. They have struggled a lot, but what they've been able to do with additional funding, thanks to federal funds, thanks to the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid and using certified public expenditures, the system was on the verge of collapse when it first became a corporation, and they've really come a long way with consistent and reliable funding, a lot of it federal. And what we took into consideration was the increased services that they've been able to invest in. So the specialty services, we have specialists going now to Tinian and Rhoda more often. They have electronic health records. They have improved billings and collections. They've tripled their medical staff. They have an outpatient pharmacy, an oncology unit. I mean, they've been able to do great things with the resources that they have. And what we also took into account were some of the changes that are happening now, and the possible crises that are looming, right? We know that there's a Medicaid fiscal cliff if Congress doesn't act quickly enough to extend Medicaid funding to the territories. That fiscal cliff is coming upon us on September 30, and who knows how soon Congress will act. So there's that. Rep. Leila mentioned the medical referral, putting now this program is going to be transitioning to CHCC entirely, off-island and inter-island medical referral. And while there is funding that has been set aside in ARPA to support that, it's a huge task that we are putting on this healthcare corporation to assume responsibility for all off-island and inter-island referrals and for restructuring the program so that it can finally operate within its means while providing services for our people. We also wanted to consider that the Medicaid presumptive eligibility that has extended access to healthcare for so many people who didn't have health insurance, that may be expiring within the next few months. When the national health emergency ends, that will be the end of Medicaid presumptive eligibility. And CHCC will once again be assuming responsibility for the care for thousands of our residents that don't have health insurance or are underinsured or are, for whatever reason, they don't have access to healthcare. And when people wait for so long, when it's an emergency to finally go to the hospital, their care is so much more expensive, and we all bear the burden for that. And so we looked at CHCC's budget request. We looked at the costs that they absorb for uncompensated and charity care. Every year, what they're projecting now with all these changes that I've just mentioned and in the upcoming year. Our hope was that in providing additional support to CHCC, more from the general fund than they've seen in a while, we could give them that extra support and cushion, I guess, to weather the storms that we know are just around the corner for our people, that CHCC will have to absorb, really, like that they will absorb that responsibility. And so we want to support our healthcare staff as much as we can. So I'm mindful of the 5-minute time limit. I do want to say that, I'm also open to solutions. When we did our medical referral hearings on Tinian and Rhoda, we did hear at some of the concerns about wanting to see more equitable attention paid to our neighboring islands and our health centers there. If there is some consideration of say, an allocation of funding from whatever we give to CHCC for the subsidy. And hopefully it is more funding than what is currently in this version of the budget. That some percentage of that be allocated specifically for the health centers on Rhoda and Tinian. So that's what I'd like to put out on the table for all of us to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sablan. Any other members? Recognize Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and comforts from the House. Thank you for allowing the House to come down here and discuss the matter before we come to a final solution to pass the budget. We all know that we care for our institution as well as the medical institution. I understand your concern that sufficient funds that will be available to our only hospital to deliver the best quality services to our patient, especially the medical referral. But like what the chairman has mentioned, that there's monies that are being assisted subsidy from the ARPA, and based on the record of the hospital, they have to be responsible also in collection, because based on 2017, there's a receivable approximately 22,000. I mean, 22.4 million dollars that haven't been collected. So they have to be responsible also in those that are already receivable. So not only to rely on us to be whenever they come over here, we always assist because we want everyone to feel safe in our hospital, and we want the community to rely on our hospital, to have faith that our hospital can be able to deliver the best health services to our community. And like I said, whenever in any way that we oppose of not having the best hospital, but they have to be responsible in collection. I don't know whether or not they're using the upgrade system to be able to collect, but this is 2017 report that there's $22.4 million that haven't been collected. They are receivable that haven't been collected. I don't know how much more. And I don't know if they shared this during your budget, House budget hearing, whether they share with you guys what is having been collected. Because to my understanding, if they don't do an effective collection, they're gonna continue. We're gonna continue to provide the best or the necessary efficient funding for them, and we all know that we need to also assist other entity for that matter. So we're here to find solution how we can address your side on that concern. But again, I want this to to be known by your side that they have to be effective in their collection as well, so that they can be able also to to have sufficient funding with all those collections. And I have mentioned in the past that they have to be effective, because I remember that when patient comes in, most especially outsiders, if they don't go straight to where they're going to pay, outsiders will just leave, and it's very difficult to collect. Not like other institutions like those small clinic, that if you're given the service, you go straight to the counter and pay. So they have to be mindful also as well as to how to be effectively collect services from patients. Us here in the cinema, there's nowhere to hide and run. They always find us. But those that are not from here, they have to be very mindful of that. I told the CEO that there's a lot of exit and entrance at our hospital. It's very difficult for you guys, to block those exits. So they have to assign someone whenever there's a service. They have to assign someone to guide them. And even if there's a counter, you say go to window number 1. When you go window number 1, He said, go window number 2. Even window number 2, there's nobody there. I don't believe a patient would just sit there and wait while having difficult because of whatever sickness that they went to the hospital for. But they have to be responsible with their collection. So I'm not opposing any, and I'm not opposing the institution to deliver. We have went through all this. If we even go all the way to the Philippines to find ways how we can resolve the concerns of medical referral, because we care for our hospital, we care for our people, we care for our patients. I know that you've been very aggressive in trying to make a better ways to assist the hospital. We also feel the same way. I'm just saying that they have to be responsible with all those receivables that they have to collect. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. I now recognize Chairman Holbrook.
I know we can say a lot of stories about CHCC, and medical referral and all this, but I think as of this moment, we are faced with a question of what to do with the 2.6. So I hope that by updating you of what CHCC is going to get, I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with the CEO, and even she is not aware of all this. So I gave her a copy ascertaining that this is what she's going to get. And that is a confirmed black and white that it is dedicated for CHCC. So mentioning already about the 5 million that they provided them for this fiscal year, plus as compared to 2019, they only have 4.2 back then. This fiscal year, they will be receiving 5 million, exceeding in 2019. Additionally, they will have 10 million again for the MRI machine, that is very critical to reduce the cost of medical referral. That is very critical. And the 11 million that can be used to pay their frontliners and workers of the hospital as a subsidy for CHCC. And again, members, I spoken to the CEO yesterday about what can we do with the outstanding collection for CHCC in the amount of 22.4 million. That's substantial that have not been collected. And I've heard that there are patients have been awaiting their bill 5 years ago and up to now, nothing. So I asked the CEO, how can we help you collect this? And if we cannot collect, can you people identify what is collectible and what is not collectible so we can strike that out from the books? So we don't want to continue to see that receivable coming to you and not being collected. No? So I just want to ask the members of the House, with this next fiscal year, with this amount of money going to CHCC, plus if they do a little efforts to collect something out of the 22.4 million, that will suffice the operation, more than sufficient for CHCC to operate fiscal year 2022. But in the interest of the House, what would you want us to agree after addressing these matters to you? And the CEO, in her closing meeting remarks, is that by now having all this information, she's satisfied that even if 2.6 is not going to CHCC. But to satisfy the House conference, what is it that you want with the 2.6? How much more do you want to take out of the 2.6? we are amenable. Okay? And just for further information, I even explained to her that the transfer of the medical referral program to you will definitely carry all the operation. Plus, you're going to be getting at least for medical referral 14 million, 14,252,000 for your operation. Plus the 1,392,000 for personnel. So that will give the CHCC a total of 15,644,000 to operate next fiscal year for medical referral. Colleagues, as we all know, from the get-go of funding medical referral, we can never really come up with a true figure to fund medical referral costs because it's in and out, up and down. So what is really happening is we just need to wait for the end of the fiscal year to see what deficit medical referral runs into, and we try to address that on the following fiscal year. And that's how we make it sustainable to continue medical referral program. But because of this funding now, I am pretty sure. And CEO is very satisfied with my explanation yesterday. But in the interest again of working together, I want to ask the House, how much do you want to take out from the 2.6 to give again the program that this 2.6 was earmarked in the get-go? So we can close this and move forward to another section.
Thank you, Chairman Hokuk. With that offer, we do propose close to 1.3 million, which is 50% of what was taken out of CHCC. And if you would like a breakdown of that 1.3 million, we can certainly discuss where we got those funds from, and then we can.
Maybe I'll give a counter offer, Mr. Chairman. Maybe 500,000. Would that do to make sure that we fund those position and those areas that was cut, and let's restore it back at least for this fiscal year, this upcoming fiscal year?
Recognize Rep. Sablan.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Chairman Hokuk, for opening the floor for negotiation on this. I do think we should be considering, that a lot of the federal funds going to CHCC do come with restrictions. ARPA money for equipment will only be for equipment, and there will be additional costs associated with operating that equipment that we should support, because you're right, MRI is very important for reducing medical referrals, but you also need people to run these things. I think it's worth considering, the issue of the uncollectibles did come up during our budget hearing with CHCC. And the CFO, as I recall, said that, that it was important to look at the bigger picture, that collections have improved overall and that they have collected more from the patients that have received care and from the insurance providers, and what was uncollected. There are issues. I'm not disputing that, but what remained uncollected, there were a whole bunch of reasons for why. Right? It could be disputes with the insurance providers, problems with the coding. I mean, whatever it might be, but because it appeared on the books didn't mean that was the end of the story, and CHCC was not making efforts to collect on those. And at the same time, CHCC has made improvements, significant improvements in collections overall. So that's one thing I wanted to note. The other thing with respect to medical referral, even with the ARPA money that has been set aside, it is worth noting that medical referral expenditures have exceeded $15 million routinely. I mean, just in the last few years, we've seen 18 million, 19 million, 21 million. And you're right, Chairman Hokuk, it is hard to project how much how much the Commonwealth will be spending in medical referral. But part of what we hope to see in transitioning this program to CHCC is that with the benefit of the data, with the benefit of, better understanding what are we spending all this medical referral money on, they'll be able to identify where we can cut costs and be able to operate within the budgets that are set aside for them. But we're in this transition now. Based on the last few years of medical referral expenditures for the Commonwealth, which are a big part of our deficit, that has exceeded the amount of money is set aside for ARPA. What we're asking for, 1.3 million, which is half of what we wanted, which was still short of what we thought CHCC really needed. I'd really like to ask that you consider meeting us halfway, and considering that the breakdown of where we think that we could redirect that 1.3 million to put back into our healthcare corporation. And I'll turn it over to our chairman to explain further. But we really tried to make an effort to compromise and to meet you in the middle as well, and consider the other agencies that you wanted to give additional funding to.
Thank you, Rep. Sablan. And so with that, we would just like to share where the areas in which we took some of those funds back and come up with this 1.3 million that the House Conferees is proposing. Earlier, Rep. Staffler mentioned the CNMI scholarship. During the deliberation process, we got a hold of the administrator for the CNMI scholarship, and she provided us with a proposed or a revised budget submission. And according to the administrator, even if they were to go back to the maximum award they would want to give to the students for fiscal year 2022, that total will come out to 2.6 million. But with the ARPA and the general fund, the total that the Senate is proposing is 5.9. That's five, and that's where we were proposing to take that 700,000 back from the general fund side. And if we did that, that will still give the CNMI scholarship 5.176 million, which is still 2.5 million more than what they have submitted to the House, their version of the revised budget. And so that's where the members felt that we can still take that 700,000 from CNMI scholarship, and they will still be overfunded, still be able to give more than what, or the maximum award per recipient would get. And if these funds were to last until fiscal year December 2024, they still have additional funds for the following fiscal year. And so that's where 735,000 out of the 1.3 million would be coming from. I just want to point out, between the first and second senatorial districts, a combined reduction of 314,000. What the committee had decided was to kind of bring Tinian and Rhoda to the same funding level. It's just unfortunate that a lot of the funds, the additional funds that were given to the municipality of Tinian were to fund personnel versus operations on Rhoda's end. And so we wanted to try to meet to ensure that Rhoda and Tinian were at around the same funding level for the overall allocation to Rhoda and Tinian. And so that would reduce the allocations to the two districts by 214,000. Additionally, the Political Status Commission, that's 100,000. The elected AG, they are still, with the ARPA funds that they will be getting, they will still be within their proposed budget submission. So that's a reduction of 92,000. And then we're open to the legislature in terms of putting back the funds that were taken out for the members' allocation. While we had hoped to have a forensic study. We agreed that there needed to be a more refined approach to how we would want the study to gather these information, and so we can revert that 100,000 back to put back into the members' allocations, and that would any remaining funds will be put towards the CHCC subsidy. 50,000 from the governor's discretionary account. We felt that we could make the governor equal with the lieutenant governor, and therefore both governor and lieutenant governor will have 100,000 in their discretionary accounts. And the 3,849 from Supreme Court. And with all of that, members, that would come out to $1.325 million. And so I hope that.
Mr. Chairman, find me another cut, not to cut Road and Tinian. Find me another entity that you want us to cut. But I will not consent for Road and Tinian to be cut at this time.
Thank
I
you,
thought
Chair.
when the House went down to Road and Tinian, they offered they're going to help them with their budget. Why are we cutting them now?
It's not necessarily cutting them, but we've established a proposed budget for Road and Tinian. The Senate increased it, but it's not per se cutting them. It's just trying to go back to the House's version and trying to meet in the middle to ensure that Rhoda and Tinian has an equal budget, as opposed to Tinian getting more than what Rhoda is getting. But if that's one of the concerns that you have,
No,
Chairman
I'm sorry,
Hochul, we
Mr.
can.
Chairman, that I will not take that offer. And Tinian naturally that will have more than Rhoda because Tinian have more personnel than Rhoda. And that's the reason why Tinian have more, the amount of 200,000 than Rhoda. Other than that, they're basically equal in the operation at the end. So find me another 200,000 that you want to cut, but I will not allow Road and Tinian to be cut in this budget.
Thank you for that, Chairman Hochul. I recognize Representative Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Hokuk, I think just to give some greater context to our rationale when we were going through the budget and trying to figure out what reallocations would make sense. I would note that that when we started working on the budget in the first place, we did increase allocations for Tinian and Rhoda, especially for operations, which were very underfunded in the governor's proposal. And we made an effort to try to be as fair as we could to the Rhoda and Tinian municipalities, and considering all of the needs that we heard about, particularly for operations. So, as you know, we looked at the ARPA funds that were allocated, and then we looked at the shortfalls that were in the operations from the governor's submission, and we increased the budgets for Rhoda and Tinian based on that. And so, what the proposed cut of 214,000 that would primarily come from the mayor's discretionary funds, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman. That's and then would go back to CHC and to return to our earlier offer. We are also open to allocating a percentage of the CHCC subsidy for Rhoda and Tinian health centers. So that funding would still go back to the municipality, but it would go to health coverage, healthcare on those islands. And in the grand scheme of things, overall, the budgets for Tinian and Rhoda are higher than what the governor proposed in the first place. And we are offering also to return funding to the municipalities, but in our healthcare system.
If I may,
Proceed.
Chairwoman Sablan, I understand that. But you know how much $1 costs as compared to Saipan in Rhoda and Tinian? That's a big difference. Secondly, we cut the contingency amount for both mayor. Many of us and many promotions have been been done in trying to promote Rhoda, where the mayor, both mayor of the municipality, exert their funding to entertain all these people coming in as being invited guests for any particular event. And every time we take away something like that from the mayor's office, and the mayor is the one hosting everyone in the interest of the municipality. Not many of us have not considered probably the cost of living in both Rhode and Tina as compared to here. That maybe $1 here, the dollar in Rhode is only 60 cents, for that matter. So it's good that if the mayor invite guests, that they bring their own food and their own drink and let them cook. But he's done everything down in Rhode and Tinian to ensure that he provide hospitality to the people that he invited for any specific event in the respective municipality. And that is a promotion also to ensure that Rhode and Tinian, in high hope that they will come and generate more funding in the future by promoting hospitality and event in Rhode and Tinian. So that's why I'm totally at this point, against the cut, knowingly that we have only small resources generated from this fund. And if that's the same token line, no Chairman no Sablan, CHCC, as I stipulated already in my earlier statement, have millions of dollars to survive fiscal year 2022. And with the 1.3 million that you're anticipating as a negotiable figure, if and when CHCC exert energy to collect 22, some partial of the 22 million outstanding, that could really help and subsidize that 1.2 that you're trying to give them back. So that's the logic of this. Now, if we're cutting this because of ARPA and we're giving CHCC this, from the general fund, and they're getting so much from ARPA, then I think we try to be fair, honestly. We like to help everyone. But our resources so limited at this time. And by virtue that we try to spend all this funding from ARPA, it will really, be done in a right way so we can see fruition of what we provided to them in the near future. So, maybe let's take a short recess and look the figure again and see what we can come up with. But I don't know if you guys want to take back the scholarship. I don't think we have any concern with the Senate.
We're not proposing to cut the mayor's contingency funds. They both will still have contingency funds, significant contingency funds, as well as access to ARPA money for their operations, for the municipalities. We took that into consideration too. Like the adjustment that we're proposing really not just reallocates money for CHCC, but also establishes some parity while providing funds for the mayors to operate their offices. And we also tried to be fair. We looked at what the mayors are going to be getting through ARPA too. And again, we're not zeroing out their local fund operations. That's not what we're proposing, Chairman Hokuk.
Yeah, but if you can consider, looking what I just stated, there's no way that we can compare apple and orange in this allotment or allocation for both senatorial.
All right.
Anyway,
Thank you, Chairman
I'd like to
Hokuk.
move for a short recess and let's work on the figure.
All right, no objection. What's that? All right, we will take a recess till 3:00 p.m. Thank you.
Okay.
our committee meeting. Before we went on break, there was discussions over which of the reallocations will be returned back to CHCC, and with the agreement of all members, the proposal is as follows. We are returning 3,887 from the Supreme Court account back into the CHCC subsidy. We are striking out the provision on the 100,000 forensic study, which would revert back to CHCC. We are moving 50,000 from the governor's discretionary fund so that it can be equal with the lieutenant governor's discretionary account, so that 50,000 will be given to CHCC. The 101,000 from the Political Status Commission, 735,942 from the CNMI Scholarship Office, and 90,420 from the elected AG account, for a total of 1,083,249. Discussion. Recognize Representative Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our Senate colleagues for coming to an agreement with us on this in the spirit of compromise. I am ready to vote on a motion to adopt this amendment, and I so move.
Second.
And just to clarify, these changes or these amendments that are being proposed will affect Schedule A and C in this bill. All right, and with that, discussion on the motion. Ready? Can I recognize Senator Hokuk?
Mr. Chairman, I think both the House Conference and the Senate Conference are reading each other's mind. As we took the recess, we also identified the same item that hopefully that we can agree to satisfy Congresswoman Sablan's concern to continue to give CHCC additional subsidy. So I believe the Senate figure too is about 1.58. So I already understand where the House Conference took their number from 1.083. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we're ready for the question then.
Thank you, Chair. Would this require a roll? Yeah. Clerk, please take roll. Yes.
Representative Lila C. Staffler,
Yes.
Representative Christina E. Sablan,
Yes.
Representative Donald M. Manglonia,
Yes.
Senator Francisco Q. Cruz, Senator Justo S. Kirigua, Senator Victor B. Hokuk.
Yes.
Chairman, all 6 members voted in the affirmative.
Thank you, Claire. With all 6 members voting in the affirmative, the amendment is hereby adopted. All right, members, moving on to the next issue at hand. Senate conferees, the House conferees, along with members of the House, have also proposed that we strike out the language that was added in section was that clear? 801D.
Zero one. 801D.
Sorry,
What does it say?
802 D2.
802.
That would be on page 52.
Yeah, that's show up.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to entertain?
I move to strike 801D2 from the budget bill. So moved. Excuse me, I take that back. I move to remove, to strike 802D2.
All right. A motion to strike section 802D2 was made and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
Ready?
Ready? Clerk, please take the roll.
Representative Leila Staffler,
Yes.
Representative Christina Sablan,
Yes.
Representative Donald Manglonia,
Yes.
Senator Francisco Q. Cruz, Senator Justo S. Kidugua, Senator
Yes.
Victor B. Hokuk. Chairman, all 6 members voted in the affirmative.
Thank you. With 6 members voting in the affirmative, the amendment is hereby adopted.
Motion for adjournment, Mr. Chairman? You conclude already now? Oh,
Almost.
you still got it?
Just one more. Yes.
Shall I? I would like to motion to reinstate the House language of the, sorry, I'm looking for the section.
604?
No,
The PSS.
the PSS part. I wanted to explain my rationale for offering this.
Page 39.
Thank you, 39. So we would like to respectfully ask for your consideration to reinstate the House language as soon as I find the page, 39. Sorry. For all funds appropriated to schools within the CNMI for operations shall take the consumer price index of each municipality into consideration when calculating the cost per student allocation. Personally, I've thought about how school budgets are funded by the local appropriations. And actually, this year was the first year where they had the most budget at $150 per student. And as much as that is, it still doesn't take into consideration the higher cost of living on Tinian and in Rhoda, especially with respect to the shipping and the needs of operations at the school level. And so the consumer price index is something that helps differentiate what a dollar actually means on Rhoda, going back to what you said, Chairman Hokuk. And so for that reason was why we had put that in there originally. And so we'd like to ask you for your consideration on that.
Recognize Rep. Sablan.
Thank you. And I think what we had also discussed was maybe just slightly amending that language so that it would be clearer that we would be directing the public school system to take the consumer price index for each municipality into consideration when they calculate the cost per school for the student, the cost per student for each school's allocation, because we're not appropriating to the schools, we're appropriating to the whole system. So I think as a subsidiary motion, we would offer an amendment to make it clear that we're directing the PSS, the system, to take CPI into account when they're determining the cost per student allocation.
Thank you, Rep. Sablan. I recognize Senator Kidwa.
Mr. Chairman, the PSS has an elected board, and they're charged to make the necessary accommodations on all the 3 islands. And I would like to give the Board of Education, they all have representatives in Rhode and Tinian, that opportunity, because the board is the one actually who sets the money for Rhode and Tinian and all the schools. So I'm not in support of the price index allocation. I would like to leave that to their representatives in the board to make that decision. I think they can do that more equitable than the price index proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kidwa. Any other members? Recognize Rep. Sablan.
Maybe for the sake of this discussion, and perhaps Senator Hustu, you could also clarify, is there anything in the law or in policy that prohibits our board, the PSS board, from taking into account the consumer price index? And, because as we were just saying earlier, the cost of living is so much more expensive on the other 2 islands. And so is there anything in the law that would prohibit the board from making those calculations without us having to direct them to do that?
No, there's nothing in the law, but the Constitution gave them that authority to make the necessary regulations for the operations and management, including the funding of the public school system. So I would like to give that opportunity to the board and see whether the CPI is more advantageous to Rhode and Tinian. And at the same time, I do not also want to deprive the students of stipend on the based on the CPI. So at this time, I ask that we leave that for the Board of Education to make the decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kidwa. Any other members?
I leave that between you.
I will withdraw my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stafford. I know that you will understand that because you were a former educator.
All right. Thank you for that. The motion has been withdrawn. Moving on to any other issues. I recognize Representative Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to offer a motion to strike on page 29. So I guess this would be to strike out the 2 provisions that single out individuals in our Budget Act. One would be on page 29, and I guess this is section 703A. And then the other would be in the judiciary section. Oh, sorry, on page 28. That would be section 702G. I so move.
You mean 703 B1A?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. 703B, small b, and then,
Okay,
No.
can we do two separate motions for the sake of?
okay, sure.
All right.
So we'll start on page
Joe,
28
what'd you
then.
say?
Okay, on page 29, section 703, starting on line 19. So that would be 703 D1A. Starting from lines 19 through 23. I so move.
A motion was made to strike section 703 B1A and was seconded. Discussion on the motion.
Can I hear the rationale of why we're striking this out?
I recognize Representative Sablon. The mic.
Test. Okay. Yeah, so we did have some concerns about this provision along, I think just in general that the provision that singles out individuals in our Budget Act did raise some red flags for us, but also we reviewed the opinion of the Attorney General and his concerns that that to pay out this amount of money would be barred by the statute of limitations, one, but also the Attorney General questioned the legal basis for Mr. Torres's claims. And I do understand that, he's been trying to make this case to the legislature, at least for the last year. I don't think that he has been able to make his case effectively to the Attorney General or the Secretary of Finance. We didn't want to put our speaker in the position of having to, possibly authorize the release of funds for something that the Attorney General says in black and white could be illegal. And so we would move, to strike this. And if Mr. Torres has a valid claim, if he can make that case and convince the Attorney General that that is the case, then perhaps we could revisit this. But we would propose to strike this at this time.
Recognize Chairman Hochul.
As I understand this issue, Mr. Chairman, the AG is saying that this cannot be done because at the time, former congressman was not a retiree. But after verifying that with the retirement, yes, he did. He is a retiree. Okay, and he did not receive this, and he's having a problem now securing his Social Security. So if any other senators or other retirees, avail for their pension on this double dipping, I think this section here will allow the authorization for Mr. Torres to get paid as a result of the misunderstanding whether he was a retiree at the time or still an employee of the or a straightforward drawing the legislature no salary. But I understand that the question there was that he was not retired at the time when he was serving, but he was a retiree. Yeah. Yeah, so with that, and I think it is an error also on the Legislative Bureau for not availing to close his note at the time. So if I may, Congresswoman, if we can just put this, and if the Attorney General review this budget, he may recommend the governor to veto if it's really a big question for this.
Recognize Representative Staffler.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to clarify one thing. One of the justifications being used is to help him with his Social Security time, and as much as we all do see that as a need for him, the time in question when he's asking for was actually when we were still in the DBDC plans, which means it wouldn't actually help him for that particular request because that was before when we had our own retirement system. And so with the timing, it just doesn't really add up to what he's asking for because it would not be in the right years from what we understand. And I mean, the statute of limitations, even if he was retired at the time with this opinion, it's still 11 years ago. That's a really long time already, I guess, in my mind. And so that's one of the reasons why I would be in support of removing this. But, you know, making sure that legal sufficiency is important is something I would also consider.
Members, before we move any further in regards to this, with this motion, according to Rule 3C of the House Rules, I will be recusing myself from any actions taken on this particular amendment that's being proposed. And so for the duration of this discussion, Chairman Hokuk will preside over this amendment.
And if I may add one more thing that I remembered. Thank you. And one other thing came to mind, that the request that is listed here at 39,000, in looking at other documents, the number kind of changed in the different discussion. From 34 to 32, when we were trying to do the numbers on how much is 60 days worth of that salary, it also popped up that this number was over the salary cap that is established for us here today. And for it to go into the bucket of legislative branch current House member salaries, I wonder if that would also create another legal issue, because that number would be higher than our current salaries by law. That's all I rest.
The calculation
Well, the this section actually we read that that out of the funds appropriated for this business unit, the Secretary of Finance will receive 39.52 for a double dipping period that may be owed. May be owed. Okay. So by having this, we'll give the benefit of the doubt, because if former Congressman Torres really deserved to get this double dipping pay, I don't see why we should cover our eyes or fool our eyes with, you know, with something that we cannot see that he did serve during his retirees, and he's got these uh, constitutional rights to be employed as a double dipping employee. So if it's true, if it's really true that he did not deserve this, and we were saying that the statute of limitation exceeded, then this specific section that we are enacting today will legalize or will enable him to get paid if we do have the funds. It's like any other vendors that we owe and we have not paid for 10 years, and if we have funds, then we can initiate the proper documentation to pay them. So for me, I'll let the Attorney General seriously review this, and from there, let him take action. But in good faith, Congresswoman, if the guy really deserves to get paid under double dipping, why should we fall on deaf ear? So it is him. When we avail with this, when we agreed with this, let the Attorney General, because he will be handling this if there is a lawsuit, if he requested for a veto. But I understand that the time when he was told that he's not qualified for this because he was not retired at the time. But after verifying, yes, he was a retiree when he served as a congressman. There's nothing to lose by having this here. There's nothing. Because the language here is very clear, may be owed, and I don't know whether he's really owed or not. Recognize that, Congresswoman.
Thank you. And I hear you, Chairman Hokuk. I think for us, one of the biggest hurdles is that there is, in black and white, an Attorney General's opinion saying that this is unlawful and barred by the statute of limitations. And so what I would suggest, perhaps we could consider, again, in the spirit of compromise, so we can move on, is that we add language to this. At the very least, if you're not going to consider to strike it, add language to say at the very end, subject to the approval of the Attorney General and the Secretary of Finance. Both of them would have the constitutional responsibility to review and make sure that these public funds are released in accordance with the law.
Can you make that into a motion?
I will offer that as a subsidiary if that's what the Senate conferees would prefer.
Recognize,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your comment on that. I know you raised about the legal statement from the Attorney General. To me, I know there's three branches of government. Do we always have to rely on the legal opinion of the Attorney General? Do we have 4 legal counsel here? Why don't we ask the legal counsel whether this is an illegal no matter that we're about to either to strike out or leave it alone? And like what the chairman said, if this is an illegal, the governor's legal counsel as Attorney General, they can always veto it if it's really true that it's legal. Otherwise, if this should go to the court, and if Mr. Torres won the case, do we have additional money to pay for whatever cost that might be?
So I guess with this discussion, though, I would like to ask you, Councilwoman Sablan, to proceed and offer your subsidiary motion. So we'll give the benefit of the doubt both on the Attorney General and the recipient of what we have in here.
Sure, Mr. Torres can make his case.
Yes.
And we don't compromise our speaker in put him in a position to sign off on something that the AG says is unlawful, right?
Well, the
Yes.
language is very clear.
Yeah.
Whether
Okay.
he's owed or not, we don't know.
Okay.
So we're not the one to prove whether he's owed or not.
Mhm. Okay.
Right.
So then I would like to offer a subsidiary motion, or I will withdraw the previous motion and offer this motion to add on line 23, after the word legislature, subject to the approval of the Attorney General and the Secretary of Finance. I so move.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to add another line after the word Commonwealth Legislature, subject for the approval of the Attorney General and the Secretary of Finance. The motion has been seconded. Ready for the question? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Representative Laila C. Staffler,
Yes.
Representative Christina E. Sablon,
Yes.
Representative Donald M. Manglonia, Senator Francisco Q. Cruz,
Yes.
Senator Justo S. Kidugua, Senator Victor B. Hokuk.
Yes.
Chairman, 5 members voted in the affirmative and 1 member abstained.
Okay. Thank you, Humphreys. Are you back to you, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Chairman Hoku. All right, moving on from my understanding, Rep. Sablan, you had another motion after this.
Yes, so the next motion is to strike out the language on page 28, lines 5 to 6. So that would be section 702G. I so move.
Second.
All right, a motion was made to strike out section 702G and was seconded. Discussion?
Okay. Ready?
All right, clerk, please take the.
Representative Laila C. Staffler,
Yes.
Representative Christina E. Sablon,
Yes.
Representative Donald M. Manglonia,
Yes.
Senator Francisco Q. Cruz,
Yes.
Senator Justo S. Kidugua, Senator Victor B.
Yeah.
Hokuk. Chairman, all 6 members voted in the affirmative.
Thank you. With 6 members voting in the affirmative, the motion is hereby adopted. All right, back to the main motion, discussion on the bill. Short recess.
Ready for adjournment?
If there are none, I would like to make a motion to adopt House Bill 22-74 HD3 SD1 CCS1. A motion was made and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
Ready.
All right, clerk, please take roll.
Representative Laila C. Staffler,
Yes.
Representative Christina E. Sablon,
Yes.
Representative Donald M. Manglona,
Yes.
Senator Francisco Q. Cruz,
Yes.
Senator Justo S. Kidugua,
Again.
Senator Victor B.
Again.
Hokuk. Chairman, all 6 members voted in the affirmative.
All right, with all 6 members voting in the affirmative, the House Bill 2274 HD 3SD1 CCS1 is hereby adopted. Clerk, please make the necessary changes to the committee report and transmit to both houses. Next item on the agenda, adjournment motion.
Thank you. So move.
Motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. This committee meeting is hereby adjourned at 3:51 p.m.
I read your minds already.